Being a couple can be challenging, but try plasterboarding a house together. That will test your relationship. Before my wife and I teamed up, I had to tackle sealing the house on my own, and that turned out to be the first big challenge of the week. My father in law and my dad had both gone home, leaving me alone to install a vapor barrier foil for the first time in my life. I cut roughly 3-meter long pieces because they were much easier to handle on my own. I could not expect any help this time. When it came to sticking to the framing, I had a couple of products I wanted to try. First, it was a double-sided tape, and the other was a spray glue. I bought a couple of cans, but honestly, I had my doubts from the start about whether it was actually going to work or not. To my biggest surprise, it wasn't just working fine, it was actually holding the foil in place incredibly well. It was surprisingly strong. I sprayed the surface with the glue, and then I waited about a minute. Simple as it sounds. I was quite worried when I started this part of the build because I wasn't sure how I was going to handle it on my own, but after the first couple of pieces, it started to feel like I could actually pull this up. Before I carried on, I taped a couple of pieces together to see how well the tape would hold them together. It worked, but once again, I had my doubts. I still had some time to install a couple of more pieces, but I knew I wouldn't be able to progress much further because I had bought only a small amount of glue and I wanted to make sure they worked before buying a larger amount. At the end, I decided to go with the spray glue because it was the fastest option. It was definitely more expensive, but I sacrificed a bit of cash for comfort. I'm getting weak, it looks like. The next day, it all started with what felt like a major setback. I noticed that the silver tape I had used to join the foils was pretty bad and started peeling off after just one day here and there. I was in rush when I bought it, and I had simply bought the wrong tape, it looked like. It was cheap, so it wasn't a big loss of money, but it was a big loss of time. I let it go for the moment and focused on what I could do. But then the second setback hit me in the face. Because of the framing, I wasn't able to lay planks between the scaffolding and the top of the wall, so I had to drill through the wall and install a couple of temporary planks to build a platform I could walk safely on. It was quite a bit of a monkey show, jiggling back and forth, trying to get everything in place. It took quite a while, but I finally managed to install them. It was necessary, and honestly, I could use a pair of hands here. Knowing I was doing this for the first time in my life, I was quite happy with the outcome. It was a bit loose here and there, and let's say was not 100% smooth, but it was holding in place. I think it will do its job, or at least I really hope so. Working from the ladder was pretty much uncomfortable and annoying time to time, but I got through it and kept applying the sealing tapes on the foil. Let's talk about the prices and how much I actually paid for all the materials for this part. For a couple of rolls of vapor barrier foil, I paid a total of 500 zloty. It was a bit of an overkill, because one roll plus roughly one third of a roll would have been more than enough, but I couldn't buy a smaller amount. Anyways, in the future, I'll have some in stock so I can use it for another project on our farmland. For all the accessories like spray glue and double-sided tape, I paid a total of 280 zloty. Although I think I overused the glue quite a bit, because one can was supposed to cover more square meters than I actually managed to do, I probably applied way too much, but it is what it is. The silver color tape, which I used to connect the pieces, was also included in the price, but if you hang around a little longer, you will see that it was all completely wasted. The next morning, I bought some proper sealing tape. It definitely wasn't on the cheap side, but after doing some research online, it was one of the best options I could find. Maybe I should do a bit of more research before I actually start working and buy products. So yeah, it was time to tape the whole roof all over again. Luckily, I had my wife around to help me, and that was a great help. This new tape was wider than the previous one, so in some places where I couldn't remove the old tape without ripping the foil, I simply taped over it. But most of the time the old silver tape came off quite easily. That was a bit concerning, and at that point I knew it was a good call to go with something stronger. After a few hours the job was pretty much done. Only a couple of delicate areas were left, the roof window and around the chimney, which needed to be sealed properly. I guess those are the weakest spots of the whole structure. I was very close to finish everything. The last step was the window. I used smaller pieces of foil and taped them together airtight. By this point, the tape had proven to be incredibly strong, and even though it looked pretty messy at the start, everything eventually fell into its final place. Once I applied this tape, there was no way to remove it, so I had to be careful. I also taped the edges directly to the plastic window to create a completely sealed surface. Added some extra pieces of tape where the plasterboard screws would eventually go through the foil, so the glue can seal around the holes and keep everything airtight. We were ready to test our relationship, and we started with the heavy lifting, carrying all the boards upstairs one by one. I tried to do most of the heavy lifting because they were pretty heavy for my wife, but eventually we managed to get everything up there. Needless to say, we burned quite a bit of energy in this process. Before the sun went down, we managed to install a couple of pieces, and that turned into the ultimate teamwork. The kids were laying down and pushing the board up with their feet. My wife was pushing from below as well, and I was trying to push the board into place while driving the screws at the same time. We were just hoping that we'd done the framing properly and that the screws would actually land in the frame. And then we did it all over again, and before the sun went down, we called it a day. I usually start each day with a bit of maintenance. By this point, I'd gotten used to things constantly breaking around the farm, and it seemed like there was always something that needed fixing. I guess there is just no way around it. It is what it is. Things needs to get fixed. We were right back to the plasterboards after a quick fix here and there. I originally planned to do it on my own, but it quickly became obvious it was way too complicated alone. Each board we put up had its edges sanded down to about 45 degrees. These gaps will be later filled, along with a few additional steps, but more on that in a future episode. For now, we just made sure to leave a small gap between the boards so everything would be ready for the next steps. Meanwhile, I put together a couple of supports to help us. It was more than necessary because the boards were quite heavy for my wife. Sometimes she had to hold the board on her own while I drilled the first screws to secure it, and it was pretty damn uncomfortable working on our knees, bending down into all sorts of weird positions. Finally, we gathered all our energy and moved all the remaining pieces upstairs for one last push. So how much do plasterboards cost in Poland? We bought 45 pieces, each measuring 2 meters by 120, and I paid a total of 1,428 zloty. This covered our whole roof, and we had a couple of boards left at the end. I won't be able to tell you exactly how much I spent on screws, but it was definitely not more than a couple of hundred zloty. Although I think I probably used way more screws than I actually needed to. But hey, it was fun. If I want to be completely fair, it wasn't all laughter and fun. It was hard work, really hard work, especially for my wife. I could see how tired she was, but she never gave up. And honestly, that's what made this whole thing feel so special. It wasn't just about putting plasterboards on the roof, it was something we were doing together as a family. It was hard, it was tiring, and at times it was frustrating. I won't lie, we also argued quite a bit, but at the end of the day, she didn't give up, and I didn't give up either. I was expecting this to take much longer, but somehow we managed to knock out the whole job in less than 4 days. Every one of those days was long and exhausting, but looking back, it was absolutely worth it. I remember one evening when we only had a couple of pieces left. I was completely done and said, "That's enough, I won't do anymore. Let's just come back another day and finish it." Then my wife looked at me and said, "Let's just push it through and finish it that day." Seeing how tired she was, yet still hearing her say that, gave me about $1,000 worth of motivation. So we pushed through, and sure enough, we finished those last boards the same day. Sometimes when you're ready to give up, you just need someone next to you and say, "Come on, let's push it forward." When we reached the window, we were close to officially finishing the job and calling it a day. We had one of a hell ride, but there is still plenty more to come. If you don't want to miss the next episodes and see how our story goes, consider subscribing, leaving a like, and dropping a comment. And if you like to support our little project even further, you can always buy us a coffee. The link is in the description, and it's hugely appreciated. Thank you very much for watching. Mark is out. Peace.